to the Lion's Den. It's Fritz and Brian here talking to you, and we've got special guest Shaun Hamman is on with us. Folks, for the folks who are familiar with the show, who have tuned in Shaun is vice president with Eland. He's on a really cool road trip out there, and he's doing some really amazing things. We spoke to him the first time a few weeks back, a little more than a few weeks back, when he was just starting out on the trip, and now he's back on the road. We're going to have that conversation with him again. So we're gonna check in. We had promised that we would check in with Shaun. We would get some updates from him, kind of stay in the loop as far as what's going on. So we're lucky enough that he's been able to join us and call in on the show today. So Shaun, are you you're on with us, correct? All right, excellent. Well, we're excited to have you back on, man. I appreciate you making time for us, and because like I said, we know you're in the middle of a pretty huge trip, pretty huge project. I'll tell you what, if you want to give folks a quick recap, I'll kind of turn it over to you for a second. If you want to give folks an update on what you're up to and what you're doing, and then I'll start. We'll start talking a little bit more about how things have been on the trip so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I made a decision about 6 months ago to take my family and I around the U.S. to visit our clients. I think in the rate environment that we're in, and in the environment that we need to just continue to grow our business, I thought it was a good idea to really just have face time with our clients. And I thought the most effective way to do that was to take an RV, kind of make an adventure out of it, not only from a PR marketing side, but also just a life experience side. And I convinced my wife, 2 kids, and my dog to get in the RV with me. And that's what we're doing. We're about 5 weeks into this trip. And so far, I'm happy to report that nobody's died. We're all alive. We're living in a small space, but nobody's killed each other. And we're having a really good time. I've had some great business conversations, had some really just good family time, and and we anticipate doing about another 6 months and going from there. But so far, lots of lessons learned, and not only personally but also business wise. And it's kind of interesting how some of that goes sometimes.
So let me ask you this, Shaun.
Well, Baton Rouge right now.
Oh, okay, that's what I was going to ask. Because last time we spoke, you were going through Tennessee.
Yeah.
Right. We were talking about Tennessee. We actually talked about some different places to eat and stop and see and so on. So Baton Rouge, Louisiana is today.
That's the next stop. I have, according to the GPS, 8 hours and 35 minutes till we get there. We'll probably just take a pit stop somewhere somewhere halfway through and finish the trip tomorrow. But should be exciting. Really excited about not only some great clients out there, but just to just basically experience the culture of Louisiana. I've never been there. I'm a big fan of spicy food, so I think it's a good mix for me.
So Shaun, you talked to your wife about doing this road trip, right? Now, how does this conversation go? Like, I mean, did she laugh you out of the room like I know Morgan would with me, or is she was she okay with it? I mean, how did you get her off the fence?
Well, I mean, the good part is that, and I have to say, not even for brownie points, but I really do have a great wife. She goes with the flow. She's very adventurous from at least an idea standpoint, and it wasn't an overnight sell. It was one of those where you got to kind of float the idea, see what the gut reaction was of her, and then I just had to kind of formulate a plan and figure out how to do it. But once we started really kind of talking through it, and she and I had talked about going to visit different parts of the country. I mean, obviously, just to experience different parts of the country is absolutely amazing. And everybody plans on doing that during retirement. Oh, when we retire, we're going to do this, and I just really adopted the mentality of why wait till you're retired? There's no why put life on hold for 20 years to get to that stage, you don't know where you're going to be health-wise or anything else, and I kind of use that angle to say, hey, you got to live for today. And, you know, and at the same time, there was just some really, you know, huge business positives, which just made the conversation a little bit easier because, you know, because I basically told her, so, well, listen, you know, we need to do this. This is just what we have to do. And you know, she kind of rolled with the punches. But overall, though, she's adventurous and just kind of, you know, I think in the back of her mind, she always feeling like, listen, you keep the road trip going, and I'll just go back to the house if it ends up bad. So I think
there you go.
She's already got the contingency plan worked out.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so, I mean, you've been at this for some time. You've been going, you know, you've been out there on the road for a bit. So let me ask, what so far has been your favorite stop, and what is the place you are looking forward to the most next?
So there's a lot to talk about there, but I think so far, you know, we were in northern Florida
it's all the way.
For a while, and just in an area where, you know, it's the ultimate assault life, right? You see everybody driving around with their center console boats and you know, salt life stickers, seeing all that, you know, in the areas where there's manatees and everything else that you can see. So far, Crystal River has been, you know, definitely been you know, great, but I'm really looking forward to seeing parts of, you know, where we're headed now. So Louisiana is definitely going to have some bonuses, but I think Yellowstone's going to be the winner for me. At least I got high hopes for it when we get out there, but that won't be for a while. We're gonna be looping out to Texas, coming back. We have some business meetings that we have to go to in North and South Carolina, and then so that's probably 4 or 5 months away till we get all the way back on the West Coast.
Now, question for you, serious question. How'd you miss Fat Tuesday in Louisiana by, you know, 8 hours, 10 hours?
Honestly, because I got the 7 and the 10-year-old in the
Yeah.
You're
right. I was gonna. So
could be really exciting parts end up into turning into, you know, PG, you know, type, and it's just Louisiana and PG sometimes doesn't go.
There you go. I know, right?
No,
I always say in Louisiana, like you know, in Vegas you can get in trouble.
Right.
In New York you can get in trouble. In New Orleans you can go way past trouble.
Oh yeah, no. New Orleans is one of my favorite cities of all time, and actually, I was going to suggest, not to be this guy, but you know, technically, Mardi Gras Day was Fat Tuesday was actually Tuesday, so Shaun's way off on that. I mean, if he's just getting to Louisiana, but Baton Rouge is a good place. Now, so Shaun, is New Orleans on the docket or no? Is that?
Yeah, it's probably going to be you know, maybe a short day trip. You know, we're going to be, you know, depending on how adventurous, we have Monday off for work, so that's going to be a good adventure day for us. So depending on weather, depending on how things go, I'd love to get down there just to experience it and see it, but hopefully, you know, we're going with the family and we get the PG version of whatever, you know, Bourbon Street has to offer.
Oh, they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. So couple things, because I have also now, last time I had restaurant recommendations for Tennessee, I have restaurant recommendations for New Orleans as well, should you end up there. But real quick, before I give you those, so you mentioned the Crystal River, and I happen to be very familiar with the Crystal River because I lived in Florida for so long, and that is, I'll just say this, man, you know, did you get so you got an opportunity to visit, did you get an opportunity to do any tubing or any of that when you were there?
We didn't, you know, we were there for, you know, for not too long, so the weather was perfect, but we didn't get any tubing. We didn't have any boat experience, which, you know, would have been a lot of fun. Okay.
I will say, I'm not surprised to hear that you enjoyed it there so much. That is a great area. It's a fantastic area. There's a ton there to see, and you got it right, man. It is the salt life, man. People are just they're a little bit more laid back, and you know, it's just kind of a good relaxed environment. So I think certainly being in the middle of the you know, rather intense, you know, type of trip that you're currently going on, having that sort of, you know, vibe is going to be a good thing. It'll be a nice welcome little respite from from everything else that's going on, and really, Louisiana, I think will fit that too, because the vibe in Louisiana tends to be pretty chill, and
Louisiana, always like. So Shaun, Shaun, we talked a little earlier about some of the stuff you've seen on your road, and I actually, it's funny. So during the first 4 months of the year, I do 3 cities a week. Right, so I was in San Antonio, then Dallas, and then Houston earlier this week, and then next week I'll be in Phoenix, Reno, and then Vegas. But on your road trips, I mean, what have you seen? I mean, I always thought you get such a perspective, but what have you seen? What have you heard? What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest thing is getting out here. And really just talking with people, understanding people's businesses, and it's really less about what I can offer when we're going out and talking to businesses. For me, it's more about understanding, at least the first couple weeks of this trip is really understanding the culture of what they're offering, because in certain scenarios, and we talked about it a little bit before, it's a paradigm shift to offer some of the products that we have to offer, or the way that we do business. Certain businesses are just set in their ways that they've just done business for 20 years one way, been successful doing it, and it's going to take more than one conversation with these people, to understand that there's other ways to do business, or maybe there's business that they're missing out on, and I'm sure you run across that all the time, right? When you're out talking here, you can go from one culture of a company to the next, and it's polar opposites of their kind of perspective on how things should be done. What's your experience on that side, Brian? What do you see when you're out on the road?
So what's interesting is when you're out on the road consistently, you get like a very realistic perspective on things, rather than, let's say, an office view, because when you're stuck and when you're in this metropolis of New Jersey previously, you kind of think, and we're in DC, you kind of think the whole world looks like that, and what you realize is 80-90% of the world is not even close, and even the United States is not even close to as developed. The mindset and culture are very different. It means it's a very diverse country with very different values, very different beliefs, very different cultures. And something like, especially like, let's say in Texas, they're still very much a good old boys club. Like, if you have to go see them, right? And in California, they're very social, right? In New York, they're not like that at all. In Florida, they're very transactional, right? And it's like, you got to realize you can't, and the thing I've learned, you can't show up to New York, acting like West Palm Beach, right? And you can't show up to West Palm Beach acting like New York, and you can definitely not go to Texas and show up in your New York suit. They'll laugh you out of town. Right, and that's like where
you can't go into New York wearing a cowboy hat either.
Correct, and that's where it's like getting sort of the pace and the energy of the cities and towns has always been something that has been a little. It's a learning experience in such different ways. But what's interesting is you come back, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Shaun. You come back so much richer, right? Not monetarily, but in culture, diversity, understanding different types of business, because to your point, in certain areas of probably Louisiana or in Tennessee and stuff, the idea of like using certain type of loan products has never even been thought of, whereas like in New Jersey, it's completely common,
Exactly. The key is, what I've found is just walking in and you're not there to sell anything. Because nobody's there to be sold. What you're there is really to understand the business. And I've walked out of a couple offices, and we had a great conversation. but I just know that I don't have the right product mix for their clientele. But we had a great conversation discussing that. And sometimes you have to understand that maybe that stop when you talk to that person, there's no opportunity for new business, but you know what? There's an opportunity to build a relationship. And you know how this industry is so small that I'm more about building the right relationships with people, because potentially that person moves to a different location a year from now or 2 years from now, and they think of me when they see our marketing and then want to do business down the road. So as we're going through, I'm looking to just have great conversations, and I think that in the long run, it builds a better rounded business and a better knowledge of the business itself. You know, and I found that to be most interesting. Where it's funny, I'll get back in my truck, I'll look at it, and I'll go, "Man, I'm never going to get a loan from this person," and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I had a really great conversation, and he or she told me their point of view and why it's there, and there's times where you just agree that we're not the right fit for them. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we're not it wasn't worth having the conversation.
So what's interesting is I have a phrase for that. It's called who luck, where who you know makes you lucky. And the way I look at it is, you know, regardless, like from an appraisal management perspective, right? Or even from a lending perspective, there's really no such thing as a waste of time when you're face to face or ear to ear with somebody, and from your perspective, who can and is ordering appraisals at some level, right? Or can and is getting loans done at some level. Mm-hmm. Meaning, because that circle is ultimately so small, right? That you know, people talk to each other all the time. Yes. People interact with each other. You know, employees move around from businesses to business.
Yeah, especially in this industry.
And you end up with a situation where you end up having a reputation, and this is what I always tell my salespeople, for being just a hard worker, and that will carry you so much further than any, you know, look. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you're selling loans, we're selling appraisals, but you know, we don't do the appraisal. You don't necessarily do the loan, right? You know, Fannie Freddie product, right? So it's like very, you know, VA product. So all they really have is, I like Shaun Hamman and his work ethic. He shook my hand. He told me he'd do a good job. And you know what? There's only 2 people this year, or within the last 3 years, that have ever done that. I mean, a lot of times I'm sure you're the only person that has ever stopped by.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What I found is a lot of, in the very small time I've seen the exposure to the market, right? So, I mean, to be on the road for a month so far and interact with, you know, 20, 30, 40 businesses, you know, it's a very small, you know, sampling size. But just to have somebody come out there and you can just have a conversation over a cup of coffee, you can tell that it's a different, you know, it's a much more relaxed environment, because most of the sales, because we're in more rural areas, or those locations may only have the opportunity for a few loans a year. They're not considered the after. They don't necessarily go into the 900 all the time. They're the ones that do. You can tell they're only there for the sale. You know, and I think we've all experienced that, right? But it's silly.
Yeah, I think we all have definitely.
Yeah, Shaun, you there? You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit on us there, but
are you driving through the back hills of Louisiana, or right now?
Florida. It may come and go a little bit, so I apologize.
I think we lost him a little.
No, he's on there.
Okay,
He's still there. It's a little choppy because, you know, again, the guy's on a roll.
So what's interesting is Shaun, like when you talked about those 1 or 2 loans a year, right? I mean, when you just think about it, and I always talk to our people about it, you know, if you found one person per day that would send you 1 loan per year, right? Just one person per day that would sound, and you had 10 people doing that. Mm-hmm. You'd triple the size of your business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not overcomplicated, you know, not sexy, just simple, you know?
Well, and here's another huge benefit. You know, and again, another huge benefit to this and to forming these relationships, because as Shaun makes the point, you know, hey, I'm not, you know, this what this particular client needs, you know, it's not suitable for me to provide to them. It's not a product that I necessarily would provide to them, et cetera, right? Well, that's what that client would typically receive, right? That's what they normally get. But we also know, and especially in this industry, that there are going to be the times where you get the one-off, where you get the unusual scenario, where, you know, this isn't something that's in your normal purview, or this isn't something that you normally do. It's something that can be done. It's a product or a service that, you know, is available as part of this business, but it's just not something that, you know, this particular client is focused on. So all of a sudden they get that. Well, guess what? If Shaun has that product, okay, and likely he will, they're going to call him first, because they have the personal relationship. They've established the relationship, right? He's been in the office. They've talked. You know, and not only that, you know, he's demonstrated that he's there to build a relationship, not, as he's, again, to his point, not just to make the sale, okay?
Yeah.
So they're going to want to, you know, just human instinct, they're going to want to call and have that conversation with him, because, for one thing, the trust is already established based on the fact that, again, it's a personal connection and the rapport is established, okay? You know, and it's been made clear through the actions that have been taken that this is about building a relationship and, you know, looking long-term in this industry, working long-term in this industry. And that is something that people will really, really appreciate. And I guarantee you that, you know, Shaun, you're going to get calls down the line from this from folks you never thought you'd hear from. But it just so happens that this particular day, they have that one file that falls out of their usual, you know, sort of box of what they normally do, and they may need some assistance. And they're going to remember, that's the guy that was in my office, that's the guy that was building relationships, that's the guy I want to work with. Because, again, they don't have the experience with it, so they're really going to need someone that they can trust with that transaction. And when you're there in person and you're setting up that relationship and you're doing that, you're building that level of trust that they're going to give you that business.
Exactly. So Shaun,
I would agree 100%. You know, the other thing that we, you know, when we started the conversation, you know, there's different ways that people do business. To go in and try to get business on the first, we'll say, cold call of that location, that's a very New York mentality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest turnoff to, you know, to anybody that I've had a conversation with so far. You know, we'll say the southern part of the country, you have to sow, you know, the efforts today to you know, plant those seeds to get 12 months, 18 months from now, you're going to build those longer standing relationships. At the end of the past that happen in a transaction, you know, all of those things that naturally just happen as you're doing, you know, through the course of business.
So Shaun, let me ask you this. So on your road trip, you know, what are you doing to? So obviously, you know, to your point, the first meeting is just more or less getting the warm and fuzzies. I mean, you're going to have some people, you know, let's say 1 out of 20 that immediately convert to customers because they, you know, they like you, trust you right out of the gate. And then you're going to have, you know, the rest kind of fall into buckets of, you know, need follow-ups and stuff. What has your strategy been on follow-ups? Or what has your strategy been on, you know, staying in contact with them?
Yeah, so we're as we continue to build this database, you know, I'm working with my marketing department to keep, you know, a slow trickle, you know, not to be that you know, 50 emails a week isn't going to win you more business, you know, so we don't want to do that. One of the things that I've also done, and I took it from you, is, you know, that I've sent them a personalized card with a picture of either their location or my truck at their location. You know,
oh, you're using that app? You're using that app?
I am. Yeah, I bought a couple credits.
Isn't that good?
Away, so it's kind of fun. Yep. So in that way, it works fantastic. You know, it's, you know, $2 or $3 every time you do it, but it's for me, like to walk out of that office, know that I had a decent conversation, set a couple of those follow-up type items, and then I know I can move on to the next location. So I think, sending that follow-up thank you card, and it doesn't have to be anything super exciting, but it's just, just a thanks for meeting with me. It was great to talk about X, and then follow up with that person 2, 3, 4 weeks later, in a consistency that, again, it's slow and steady wins the race. It's not something where you're going to beat them, to death to get their business.
So what's interesting, I actually recently started doing this, but is trying to figure out, okay, I meet all these people, and then I'm Shaun, I mean, you're meeting 5, 6 people a day, and how do I, because ultimately people will do business with people they like and trust, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately they build a relationship. But people generally, like if you just look at like a human psychology of somebody, are kind of like relationship adverse. You know what I mean? And like Tom Segura had a great line in one of his comedy shows where he's like, life can be summed up with, all right, I'm glad this is over. Let's hurry up and get this over with and get the hell home, right? Right? Like, like kind of like, because no matter what, you're thinking, all right, let's get this over with and get the hell home, right? And so building relationship, well, I mean, just saying, most people aren't very good at forming new relationships.
Well,
right?
that I definitely agree with. That's no question. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, especially as you get older, because it's easier to do the younger you are. I think when you're a kid and you're younger, it's you're obviously more socially open, okay, and you haven't necessarily formed a lot of your opinions that will later inform the type of relationships or the type of folks or people you're looking to have relationships with. So I agree with that. I think that it is very challenging to develop relationships as you get older.
And so what I started doing, and Shaun, is literally I meet with let's say I met 5 people today. Right, and I was at a conference in San Antonio earlier this week. I got like maybe 60 cards. Okay. So I take those 60 cards, and as the airplane I'm starting to head home, take their cell phone number, put their cell phone number in the phone, send them a text message like, hey, Shaun, great meeting with you. This is Brian Coester with Coester VMS. This is my cell phone number. Save it, please, in your phone. If you ever have any problems with the appraisals, please reach out to me, and we'll make sure to take care of it right away. And then I take a picture of their card and put it in my phone. And then I save them as a client, right? So if I just go and put in my phone, client, I have a list of everybody I've ever personally met. And I have like different variations of it. And that has been so effective in trying to build new relationships because you're right there on their phone. And they can tell you went out of the way to do it.
This also explains why I sometimes get middle of the night texts from you.
Huh?
I'm sorry, Shaun, I missed that. I was giving Brian a hard time.
And I was just saying, it's subtle, it's not intrusive, and it's effective because it's a personal thing. That you if somebody sends you a text like you do, they know that that's not an automated system doing that. At least that's the way I look at it. And I know you're gonna. You spend the time to send that text, and and again, you're getting into the number one means of contact, which is their phone. It's fantastic, man. It's great. One of the things I always, and I use this as an example, and this probably goes back maybe 8 or 10 years ago, even. It might have been that long. It was from you. I remember when you visited us when we were in our Sylvan office. And I don't know if you remember, but we used to write in colored highlighters on one of the on the windows.
I remember that.
It looked like Goodwill Hunting, right? We used to do these things. So you came in to visit, we brushed chops, and I don't think we were doing a lot of business with you at that point. And 2, 3, 4 days later, this package of paint markers in all sorts of crazy highlighter colors, showed up at the office. With a little note from you like, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. Great conversation. Hope you have fun with these. That little thing, to this day, I still talk about that, and I use that as an example of people as we start the conversations and talking. But if you tens of thousands of
Oh, yeah.
appraisals with your company.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Since that,
Thank you.
$15 investment. So you saw an opportunity. It was something to follow up with me that wasn't business related, right? And that's, I think, a big thing, is to find a common ground or something that you can do that's just outside the box, but pertinent to the conversation that we had when you were there. And it couldn't have been more effective. It was probably the best $20 you ever spent.
Well, I appreciate it. You know what's interesting is, so I always think to myself, like the mindset, right? When you're going around the country, so you're going around the country, you're going to go, and it's like the mindset I always have had, and like Fritz, the same thing with your art stuff, right? Is one, people want a relationship with you. That's number one. Because you're a good guy, right? Like Shaun, you're a good guy, right? And it's like people want a relationship with you. And not only that, they want you to succeed, right? Now, they don't always want you to succeed, but they want you to succeed, right? In the sense of like, they want to help people be successful that are trying to be successful, right? And what's interesting is I always think like the power of vulnerability, right? Of really kind of like putting yourself on that edge of, hey, this might not work. And it's not really even a gimmick in the sense of I'm being, Fritz as a person, right? Or Shaun as a person is important. And most people in business kind of forget the person. They kind of forget, like, they think of you as a transaction, or they think of you as another loan, or they think of you as another appraisal, rather than thinking of it like, hey, Shaun's out on the road just like me, or Fritz is an artist trying to get his paintings out just like everyone else who's trying to sell something. And it's like taking the extra time to be like, well, what do I know that would be helpful to him? And then what does he know that would be helpful to me? And just kind of keeping the energy there, right? Rather than it being so salesy. Because it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, there's not really any company that is that much better than another company, right? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like in the mortgage side, in the mortgage.
I was just going to say, if we compare FiOS and Comcast, we may have a disagreement.
Well, you're getting on the internet, right?
But you're correct. Yes, you're definitely correct. I believe in what you're saying. There's not typically a wide variance, particularly in this industry, is very relevant. But I agree. I think people do want to see other people be successful. Yeah. I think that's a human instinct, because I think one of the things that we know from just how we've evolved and how our societies and things have developed is that when as a group we are doing better, we do better as individuals. And it's a lot more rewarding for folks when the group is doing well as opposed to when the individual, because again, the two successes go hand in hand. If there's group success, the individual is going to also have a level of success, and that success builds success. Okay, so that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where it continues to roll over. It's a kind of the same thing. Again, I'll bring in some. We haven't talked sports. I'll throw in sports in there. It's the same idea, like when people say, why would the 49ers give Jimmy Garoppolo this insane contract, right? Why would they pay him all this money? It goes to the point of people want other people to succeed. Here's a guy who clearly helps other people be more successful at their job. So he's good at his job. Now, is he the best at his job? Not on a strictly one-on-one comp, basis. No one can make that claim for him that he's the best. However, he provides so much value to the team, okay, and to the organization by improving how everyone else operates, by improving how they work. And a lot of that is humility. You have to have a lot of humility to have that quality, okay? And that's one of the things I think why humility is so important to be really successful. You got to be a bit humble as well. And so that's why he gets that money. That's why he's worth that money, because he creates a scenario of group success, right? And I think it's the same thing that you're talking about here, where it's an idea of creating group success, because humans are better when they help each other, and we all benefit that way. We wouldn't be here now if that weren't the case.
100%.
So
Shaun,
I always use the example that everybody wants to have a guy, right? So,
yeah.
If you're at a barbecue,
that's good.
They always say, "Oh, I got a deal. Oh, let's do a mortgage. Oh, I got a guy for you." Oh,
Yep.
I'll use this guy. And at the end of the day, the more people that you've said hello to, or listen to their story, or listen to what they do, the more likely you are to become that guy. And at the end of the day, the most successful people are the hardest working people. And and that's just how it works. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a grind, and you have to be putting yourself, 80 hours in the office doing everything. No, there's nothing wrong with playing golf. And every person that you ever play with, let them know that you're in the mortgage business, that you value your customers, you value a referral from no matter what that person is. It's just your circle of influence just keeps getting bigger. It doesn't have to be as cold as a lot of people look at it. It's like you don't have to hang your business card to every single person you meet, because that, a lot of realtors get that that connotation where it's like, oh, this guy's so salesy. People just need to know what you do. And with social media and everything else that's out there, like if somebody wants to find you, if you make yourself easy to find, you're going to get those referrals. You're going to get people that are happy with your service. So I think that's the key, is just putting yourself out there, and at the end of the day, not caring what other people think, because nobody really cares about your issues, your problems, or anything else. I mean, it sounds cold, but you just need to get out there and put yourself in a scenario to be successful. I think most people are just afraid of the possibility of being successful by doing that.
Oh, I've said every week on this show that people fear success because success is hard and requires effort. So the people don't fear failure, because failure is easy and familiar, and that there's no fear in that. And I just want to say one more thing. I'm gonna let you jump in. Not only does everybody want to have a guy, the successful people want to be that guy.
And and to your point, so intentional, right? And I think a lot of times, like, how you can tell. Okay, and we're going to bring up Rocky, because I know you wanted to talk about Rocky anyway. But like the Rocky movies, right? Yeah. The Rocky movies, right? Or the the NFL playoffs, or the NBA championships, or the Olympics.
Okay.
Right? The Olympics. Mm-hmm. Now it's going on. Shaun White, right? Amazing, right? I don't know if you saw, just unreal. You can see that the human spirit has a soft place and is a sucker for effort and intentional effort.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and when you see the guy, and he's on his last leg, and he's barely running, and he takes a leap towards the end zone and scores the touchdown. I mean, there's so much inspiration for that, in not only seeing the struggle, but seeing the effort in the human spirit. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens is, a lot of times in business, people are afraid to put forth that effort. Like, people are afraid to kind of really say, okay, I'm giving it my best shot every single day. And I'm going to make as many phone calls as I can. I'm going to send as many text messages as I can. I'm going to send as many emails as I can. I'm going to call people back as fast as I can. I'm going to see as many people as I can. I'm going to be as professional as I can. And you're getting 110%, right? Because they're afraid of what happens if it doesn't succeed.
Right.
And what happens if I fail? What happens if... Not only what happens if I fail, but what happens if I succeed, right? Because there's all of those things.
Yeah, I think it's that they're afraid of the success. Again, I don't think they're afraid of the failure. I think they're afraid of the effort to be successful.
Well, what ends up happening is, I think there's a combination of both.
Right.
I think some people are afraid of, hey, what happens if I go into this office and somebody says no? But then at the same time, they're afraid of what happens if I go into this office and somebody says yes. Like, what do I say next? And so instead, they do nothing.
Right, which by the way, is the same exact result you would get as if you went in the office and they said no.
Yeah.
So this is the whole point of you have to make the effort, okay? Because you'll hear me say this internally, constantly, and I say this a lot. I'm going to call him out and say I use Frank as an example. I say this to Frank all the time. We only control the effort we make. We don't necessarily control the outcome. We don't necessarily control how people react to our effort. But we absolutely 100% have complete control over our own effort that we make. So if we want to get the best result, we consequently have to make the best effort. We have to produce the best effort to get where we need to go. And there are going to be times, and it's a hard lesson to learn, but it is a necessary lesson. And again, this is one of the reasons I think sports is so important, because it's largely how we all learn this lesson at a young age, which is you can still make your best effort. You can still do the best you absolutely can, and even do better than you ever thought you could, and still fail. That's okay, because there's value in learning that lesson, and you're going to learn something from that, which you'll have the same result as if you didn't try at the end of the day. The difference being you'll have such a richer experience, and you'll have so much more that you've learned by going through the process and failing. So
now, Shaun, question for you. Okay, serious question too. Rocky IV.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Yep.
All right.
Now we're just getting into the fun bits. All right.
Do you think, Rocky IV is when he fights the Russian? By the way,
Ivan Drago. Yeah.
Best Rocky of all time.
Great you.
That is the best Rocky. So Fritz and I were talking about, do you think Rocky IV had any influence in ending the Cold War? Because you take the Russian and the American spirit, the Russian kills the guy, right? You know what I mean? And it's this whole
Apollo
thing.
Creed, by the way.
Apollo Creed, right? Like, I mean, it's, it's a It's basically killed Muhammad Ali. I mean, let's be real, right?
Essentially, yes. Muhammad Ali. Apollo Creed is a representation of Muhammad Ali.
And what, do you think there was any...
That makes Rocky Chuck Wepner, by the way.
Direct... He actually got sued for that, and he settled with Chuck.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Do you think there's any direct correlation?
Is there any direct correlation between Rocky and what?
And the end of the Cold War. We're throwing you a total curveball on this one, man. And just for the audience to know, we did not prep Shaun on this.
Huh?
I'm having a tough time hearing.
So the question is this: do you think that there is any correlation? And again, this is way outside of where we normally go, but any correlation between the film Rocky IV and the end of the Cold War?
That's pretty deep.
No, we have.
I could come back with some crazy sarcastic answer, or I don't know. We should just lead it with some sort of a Trump.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. That's funny.
And again, Shaun, I apologize, man. We threw that. That came out of left field. It was a conversation we were having a little bit earlier. Just as part of the day, and it was like, let's talk about that on the air. Okay.
So Shaun, you're on the road. You're seeing. Are you able to do the 5 appointments a day? Has that worked out?
No. No. For a few reasons. So not for a lack of effort. I've been trying a couple different methodologies. So sometimes I've been trying to figure out the balance of you come in unannounced, because the person I'm visiting is not anticipating me, doesn't have a specific need for me, so it truly is a cold call. I've seen much better success if I just walk into the location, but you're at no level yet, and you may walk in there, but you may be talking to the secretary because the owner or the person, the decision maker, is at a building site or doing something. So, when you look at quality conversations, I probably run about 20%. So one out of every 5 locations I cold call on, Do I actually have what I would consider a valuable conversation? And then in between, I'm still communicating with people, still having a good interaction, but it's I wouldn't say it's as fruitful. And the challenge I've come across too is some of the locations that we look at, in certain areas, and I think we're going into areas that don't necessarily do a lot of USDA, FHA, VA financing. Part of the job is to get more of that business and let them know that it's available to them. But most of the places are just aren't of the mindset to do that business. And for some reasons, I understand why, and some reasons I try to voice my opinion politely why I think they should give us a shot. So it's I'm realistically probably seeing this anywhere between 2 to 3 people a day. If you average it out, probably about 10 a week right now, which I still think is a successful, successful area. When I knew going into Florida, it wasn't a large concentration of vendors and clients that we've already worked with. So this is an area that was definitely going to be new territory, and time will tell if it was fruitful or not. We'll have to see how it goes. But we're heading into Texas and into Louisiana, which is areas that we have clients that we currently are doing business with that we're definitely doing some follow-ups on, and it's a much easier time to set up appointments and have good conversations.
Gotcha.
I will predict good success. I'm going to predict that you're successful in Florida.
Yeah. Well,
I am. No, I'm going to predict it. I'm going to predict you guys are successful and it pays off because, I believe that that the human interaction part of this is worth every bit of it, and I think that's going to make a huge difference because, look, coming from having worked in an office like this where I've got AEs and folks coming in and out, if I'm sitting in my office and someone comes in, they've got their, look, think about it, man. He's on a road trip. He's got the truck wrap. He's got all this stuff going on.
You would get all my business. You would get all of it. Yeah.
You're going to remember. That is a memorable.
Wow.
That's a memorable day. Okay, for the folks that where Shaun walks in their office.
Yeah.
That's a memorable day for them. That's probably the most memorable day of the entire month for them, realistically.
That in and of itself is a pretty entertaining 20 minutes of their time.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. So, again, once they have something that fits, once they have some amount of business or some deal or what have you that fits with, hey, this is something that we could work with, Elan, you'll see it.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see it. I'm confident with that.
So Shaun, your truck, and I'm going to pull up a picture.
Put the pics up, man. It looks great. They did a great job on that.
Of your wrapped F250. What kind of dog is that, by the way?
We rescued him. He's a bit of a mutt. My wife got the DNA testing, so she specifically knows what he's made up because we wanted to figure it out. But he's half Chihuahua, a quarter American Staffordshire Terrier, so he's a half pit bull or a quarter pit bull, an 8 Springer Spaniel, and then an 8 just mixed dog. So at some point, a American Staffordshire Terrier and a Chihuahua, had a moment.
That is funny. That's an American dog.
So your truck is kind of. It's kind of interesting because I love this, right? And if you look at our studio, right? So going back to our studio, now at least, it's starting to get decorated a little bit, right? Like Fritz has his painting back here. I got my little sign, my little Trontosaurus Rex thing. But
you guys are in a new office, right?
not yet. So it's going to be another 2 months before they're building it out now. But let's talk about that whole failing forward and just getting started, right? Because that's what you did. You took your family on the road. You took your family on the road. You started off with kind of like a preset design of saying, okay, I'm going to do the 7-month trip. And then you're kind of figuring, all right, well, maybe, the drop-ins aren't working as much as I thought, so maybe I'm going to have pre-scheduled appointments, right, like cold callers calling them ahead of time, right? Or maybe, the F-150 isn't quite cutting it with, my kids and stuff. I feel a little bad about it, so we're gonna buy an F-250.
Yeah, just upgrade the truck.
And then all of a sudden now you're, that the truck is not. What's that? The truck is not cutting it, and we're going to get it wrapped. What else have you learned? I mean, and let's talk a little bit about just kind of that getting started, because it's the same thing with the podcast. Like, we started the first podcast, it was horrible. We could get anyone on the phone. It was just a disaster. And then now it's kind of like, we got it down to where I got some software going, and it's a little bit better.
Just wait until a year from now.
I know, right? I can't wait. I have Jerry working on some stuff where we're going to do like a whole room. What define that learning process? Meaning, what have you learned on the road that you just kind of continually improved on?
Shaun, you still with us?
I think we lost him.
Oh,
let's call him on the cell.
Yeah, we did lose him.
Let me call him.
All right, we lost him. You want to call him on the cell?
Yeah,
give him a call on the cell. That'll probably be easier. We'll probably have a little better connection that way too.
Hey guys, there we go.
Yeah, Shaun, sorry about that. All right, now let me kind of repeat this question. So, you got started a month ago, and you kind of come in with this sort of preset idea of how it's going to work. The same way we did with this, podcast. You're kind of, Fritz and I have been talking about it, and then at a certain point, you're just like, as of Friday, we're live, and it was originally Wednesdays, and we've switched it. But with your adventure, I mean, you started off with, an F-150, a box full of stuff that you thought you needed, and then from that you've kind of evolved, and we talked a little bit about this. Now you had to buy an F-250, and then you got your truck wrapped, and then you started with the concept of doing let's say 20 meetings a week, and it's kind of worked out to 10 meetings a week with the drop-ins, and then maybe my thought initially was like, well, why don't we have I would get somebody to do calls for you and schedule the appointments for you, to be honest with you. Describe how this month on the road, month and a half on the road has been on a learning experience for you. And what have you learned and changes you've made?
We're reconnecting you now.
Yeah, so a couple big takeaways for me is I realized I needed a lot less than we were talking about before. It's like I need a lot less than when we initially packed and put everything. Like, oh, we have to have all these must-have items, and we've kind of realized that if we haven't used it in the first month, it's just taking up space that we really don't have. It's limited to begin with, so we're kind of losing some of those items that you thought you needed, but you don't need. Probably one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this though is you just can't over plan something. I mean, you can sit there and you can plan it to death, and at some level you're better off just executing a solid plan, but not the perfect plan that's only maybe say 70% effective, than working on it for 3 months more to make it 80% effective, but you're not picking up enough for it to make a difference, right? So I think at some level, I think it was really good to just have kind of a go date and say, hey, as of January 15th, like, we're just leaving. Like, that's just how it goes, and we'll learn it on the road, or I'll order it when we need it, and just to kind of do that and put yourself in that situation is what you have to do. At the end of the day, you can plan yourself to failure, essentially.
Yeah, and I think, and Fritz, you want to piggyback, because Fritz is an artist too, and if you guys see some of the paintings back here, I got some at my house, and you can see some of them over here. I think a lot of it, to your point, Shaun, is you overthink it, but I feel like sometimes people don't have an accurate idea of who they are already. Meaning, like, you've been in lending for, what, 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah, I've been with eLend for 15. So when we look at it just that, then a few years.
15 years, right? You know everything there is to know about loans. You've been on the road. You've done trips before. So just your initial, like, if you didn't have anything planned and just got in your car one day is pretty good, right?
Yeah,
like, I
have a good baseline.
Yeah, you have a good base. And I think it's like one of those things to where it's like, I talked to Fritz about this. All the stuff we've had for this show, we didn't have to buy anything for the show. We had the lights, we had the microphones, we had the backdrops, we had all this stuff. We just weren't utilizing the skills we already have.
That's right.
Right? And it's like,
I don't know what is something where you realistically have to come up with a plan, or is it just organizing what you already have to something where it's more effective, right? You know what I mean? Like, because it's not like you know, Shaun, you really had to change much, right? You're sort of going out and selling the stuff you've been selling for the last 10 years, you know, on the road or on the phone. And
I think it's really, I think it's really just a matter of immersing yourself in something. I think anybody that's doing whatever job that they have for any length of time, so at least you have some sort of semblance of a foundation of your job, that your goal is just to say, I'm going to put, and people say it all the time, I'm going to put 100% into this. Well, are you really? Right? Is this 100%? Or I can tell you, when you're driving your truck that's wrapped like a big commercial, and right now I'm driving down the road and I'm towing my home, I'm fully immersed in this situation. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it, right? Everything I own currently is on, you know, 10 wheels and driving down the road at 64 miles an hour. So it's like, that's just full immersion in what you're looking to do. And you learn a lot about not only yourself or your own knowledge of the product. One of the big takeaways that I've had too is I have a whole new respect for the employees that I left back at the office. You know, for me, part of my concern was taking the ship as, I'm going to be out of the office, I'm not going to be accessible, are they going to be able to get the questions answered, this and that. And you know what, we just have some amazing staff members that just stepped up and said, hey, I got this. You go do what you have to do, because we need the business to come in so we can be fruitful and we can you know, continue to grow. And to me, that's just exciting, from not only from a management standpoint, but also just to see people grow personally. It's just been, you know, that's one of the things over the last 5 weeks I've seen, and it's, you know, that makes me proud. I mean, that's exciting to see people really take those new challenges on.
That's fantastic.
No, that's fantastic.
That is fantastic. And you know, there is a ton of value in just, to Shaun's point, just immersion in something. And in fact, in a lot of cases, you know, that's how human beings learn things. The more, you know, that's how we learn. That's how we learn more quickly. Or the most effective way for us to learn things is to just be fully immersed in them. You know, so you know, yeah, absolutely. Getting out there on the road this way, fully. I mean, you know, that's a
100% committed.
It's a full commitment.
100% commitment.
So I'm not.
And have you? Go ahead.
I would say I'm not surprised to hear that you know, that he's learning a lot, not only on the road, but learning a lot about what the qualities of the folks that he works with that, you know, have stayed back and how well they've done. And that's a wonderful thing to hear. You know, you like to hear that,
I mean,
because
that's equally as exciting for me is to see that management, that, you know, like some people stepping up, taking on more responsibility, you know, really hitting their true potential. That I knew that was there, that other management people knew it was there, but sometimes you just have to, again, they have to fully immerse themselves in what they're doing and say, hey, we got to do this. And it's just really exciting to see it happening. So.
No, that's fantastic. So
real quick, we got about 90 seconds left, and I know Shaun's got a 3 o'clock, so I'll let you get the last one in. I'm just put it out there.
So Shaun, you know, as you look towards the next 6 months on the road, does the outlook look any different now that you're a month in than when you originally started?
Yeah, it does. So I think from my standpoint, I think even though whether we spend 5 months, 6 months, maybe 9 months, you never know. Like maybe the journey goes on a little bit longer because we feel that we're getting a benefit from what we're doing. I look at it in much probably more manageable pieces. I'm looking at it the next 2 stops. So let's say the next 2 or 3 weeks out, because it seems like I lose focus of the immediate of what we have to do when I start to plan 6, 7, 8 months out, right? So I look at things more, you know, more focused, laser focused in the shorter term. But yeah, the outlook's great so far. The experience has been phenomenal. You know, with my family, with my kids, and I always joke about it, but you know, I'm traveling with my 7 and 10-year-old, and eventually, you know, 2 girls, there's going to be a time where they don't want to spend any time with their dad. So right now, the fact that they still like me and want to be around me is great. So I got a couple of years of that left until that evaporates. So I have to kind of enjoy all aspects of life until then. But yeah, the outlook's phenomenal. As long as the temperature stays above 60, it seems that I have a happy family. Below that, it starts to crumble. I'm not going to lie.
There you go. That's funny. And let me ask you this. Last question. What have you changed? So you originally came with a plan that you were going to do this, and then you're a month in. What have you changed as a result of being a month in?
The one thing that I personally found was, the idea, if I was going to have 5 conversations a day, every day. By doing that, it may have been more successful specifically for the trip, but I would have lost sight of the family value, the time with the children, all of that. So the key is the balance of interacting with the clients, but at the same time enjoying the fact that I'm spending time with my family and out here, and it's that balance. I think you've been on the road too. If you did 4 locations a week for 6 months, you would hate life. Doesn't matter what you're doing. It's a grind. So the key is balancing out between spending time with the people that you're supposed to out there, but at the same time spending some time, just doing the follow up and the emails and conference calls and things like that, which I still naturally have to do as part of running the business, and at the same time still being there for dinner, with my kids. So it's in the last probably 4 or 5 weeks. That's what I've seen more than anything is trying to figure out that balance to still really be productive, but enjoy the journey as much as the outcome of the journey.
So funny story. So my, everyone knows my dad's an appraiser, Shaun. So he was appraiser realtor, right? So him and my brother used to, maybe literally like since we were born, because my mom was an accountant, and so she had a full-time job in the office, and so in the summer, ever since we were born, I'm talking 2-3 years old, my brother and I would go out with my dad. Well, he had his own small business, and so he would go out and solicit. And he used to take us in to all the mortgage companies and brokers and loan officers when we were like 4, 5, and 6. And I still have like, you have like childhood memories of me. Like
I don't have any childhood memories of you, but
yes,
yeah, I have childhood memories.
Yeah. And it's like I still have memories of sitting in the office of some like mortgage company in Woodbridge or Manassas or Baltimore, and this was before cell phones, and just kind of listening, to my dad shoot to shit with somebody. And it's one of those things to where, so my brother and I, this is, interesting for your girls, when we got into the business, number one, there was zero fear. Like the idea of like me going into your office, Shaun, unannounced, with no appointment, I was 100% certain I was going to be able to meet with somebody, right? And it's like there was zero fear, and that has been so helpful in life, because I didn't even know, like it was probably 2 years into owning my own business to where I realized that people were afraid of going up and like walking into a lender's office or walking into a random company's office, and I always think to myself like, well, then how are you going to get the business?
Right. I'm with you.
What do you think you're just going to like?
Osmosis. You're gonna by osmosis. That's how it works.
Well, I would recommend bringing your girls in from time to time. That's why I say that. It's one of those things.
I definitely think you're right, and if they can take that life lesson with them, and however they apply it, just to make them stronger, individuals. I couldn't agree more. I think it's great.
Well, I think it comes down to building relationships with people. Like, how quickly can you get beyond the position and just get to the person?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that seeing someone with their family certainly helps to shorten that process as well. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, listen, I'm gonna be the bad guy now, and I'm gonna.
I got to run. I apologize.
All right, guys.
Yeah, no, not at all. Shaun, I apologize to you for keeping you a little bit over, man. But best of luck, and look, we appreciate you calling into us again. We think it's fantastic what you're doing, and of course, we want you to stay safe and have a great time out there and all the success that you can have. And I'm gonna, we'll plan on talking to you in a little bit. Maybe another couple of weeks or a month or so to see check in.
We'll check in, and I'll keep watching the stream. So we'll go from there. It's exciting. So
absolutely excellent.
And thanks guys for having me on.
Thanks, Shaun.
Absolutely.
Off to make more business happen.
Hey,
You do that, and if you get to New Orleans and you're looking for a restaurant, you want to eat at Cafe Maspero on Decatur Street. It's where the locals eat, and they have, at least they used to, $1 strawberry daiquiris. So
there you go.
there you go.
That's fun. And
All right,
Shaun,
I'll
stay.
send you an email, but I'll make sure I get that one.
Give my blessings to the family and stay safe out there, buddy.
Will do. All right,
Thanks,
guys.
bud. Bye.